This year, we've already closed, I think, about 555 million year to date, and we have about 96 million pending. So this year, we're forecasting to close 650 million.
Massive.
Yeah, so we
Massive
10x
growth.
our business in within 2 years.
All right, welcome to the Raquel Show. Today, I have a very special guest, someone that I've known for over a decade. Can you believe that? And I have seen him grow from his beginning of his career in real estate to this massive network throughout California and now going into other territories. And I'm excited to sit down and have a conversation with him about his journey. So welcome to the show, Kenny Fast-Trung. So happy to have you here. Let's just talk about the last year because you've got like so many things in that story that I'm going to obviously ask questions about. What would you say were some of your biggest key factor to scaling 10X?
I mean, seek out opportunity when everyone else is looking at other stuff. Like things are down, like seeking out these 17 brokerages and interviewing them when everyone else is like, oh my God, like what we're doing. And then last year, it was funny because, COVID hit. I remember moving this brokerage January 29th was my official move out day. We signed the office space on February 26th. We were there for 2 weeks. It was great. Like I was like, okay, we're on something. This is super fun. For that month, we were working in hotel lobbies and restaurants. We didn't have an office. This was, I think, where like if I didn't do this, I wouldn't have had reached this level of success right now. But between like early March, it was COVID. So like non-essential business, you can't do open houses, you can't do staging, you can't show homes. Like real estate was shut down. The whole world was shut down. And then people started doing Zoom calls. Nothing really special, right? Zoom mastermind. I got invited to one and with mostly South Bay agents, like top agents, whatever, like chat. And then I got invited to another one. I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. I can do this. I know how to like put some stuff together, which I never hosted a webinar before, by the way. Eventually, somehow between March to May, I was on about 70 webinars and I hosted about half of them. I think it was like 34. So it's in every single webinar I've done is recorded and on my YouTube page. So I started being invited as a lead speaker for many things. What are you doing during the pandemic? How are you pivoting, right? That was the word of the year, pivoting. I remember I first started, like my first webinar locally is like, hey, let's grab the top Oakland and Berkeley broker owners and just chat about what's going on. And people are tuning in like, oh, well, they're the smartest people, right? Like they need to know what's going on. I got them all. And later on, I was like, okay, let's do top 1% Alameda agents. And then like 26 people. It was too many. We decided to shrink it later. And then Contra Costa agents, and then Napa. And then like, oh, let's do something for hustle and motivation. Let's do something for mindset. And then like 3 people, like all team leaders. And then we started doing later on, like, like Inman Startup Alley. I had 3, here's our 3 tech tools of the day. And then I remember one day I had like 3 webinars. Some weeks I had 15 webinars. But then that really caught momentum because when I'm highlighting these people where I'm just moderating the conversation, I'm running, like I email, I was really big on email. I emailed my entire database, which had 10,000 contacts, and every agent like, hey, check out these 15 webinars I'm hosting this week. And then I started going on Facebook, and then Zoom, you stream it to Facebook, and then make sure it took a lot of work. It was kind of like breaking all the time. Then I tagged every single person on Facebook. So if you knew one of the top 20, 30 agents in our marketplace in whatever county, they were featured on my page and people would watch it and they would watch me. So between that, I did up 70 webinars. I really just put myself out there because there's nothing else to do. At one point we had like 200, 300 people watching it. And then when things came back to life and people were, back to real estate business, couldn't even get 20 viewers on that stuff. But during that time, I maximized those 2 months. So doing all this cool stuff, just putting myself out there. And then people start looking at options. And when people are thinking of moving and, hey, I'm not getting any support from my broker, I was like, well, Kenny looks pretty busy. He's not selling homes, but he just looks really busy. And he seems to know what he's talking about, which in fact, I do, but I don't, because I brought 20 people on. I'm just moderating conversation. On a 60-minute chat, I'm speaking like 5 minutes. But I look cool because I brought 20 people together every single week or, asking great questions. And I think that put me on the map to be seen as a thought leader during that time when everyone else was like not doing anything. So like we weren't even like all about growing or scaling, but in June I hired I think it's 17th agent. We did this first indie model where I bring a team member where I'm not on their contracts. Like what, how? Well, that's the EXP model. I could be a team leader, but not be on the contracts. So I don't take on any liabilities. And fast forward now, we're counting onboarding. We've been onboarding about 20 agents a month now.
Well, congratulations on all of your success. And I know that for the real estate agents that are probably listening to this episode are thinking, are you still in production? How did you, if you aren't in production, how did you get out of that? And then, what's your focus on now? Because you've massively grown your team. And I would assume that you're not doing both.
No, stopped working with buyers late last year because I got scolded by my mentors. Like, dude, you can't build a business in cars. Like, that makes so sense. Like I've been talking about other teams lately, big producers, like 15, 20 producers. One challenge I see with other teams is you can't lead and be in production at the same time. And I hear that on our big Zillow Flex masterminds nationwide that all leaders are getting in production. And then the challenge is if you're a team, you're listening to this, right? For you, whatever splits you are, let's just say 20% split, right? Well, if you got production, you need 5 people to replace you to replace that income. But then you need 5 people that's good as you to replace that income. You need 8 to 10 people in your company just to replace what you earn, right? And so I truly feel it's like one way or another. Either you scale or you stay in production. You can't play small, because if you play small, you can't. You're going to be a insufficient leader because you're half committed, and you're going to be a really bad agent because you're only half committed to your. And I don't even know how you're going to pick which clients you're going to work with, by the way, right? So you actually need like 10 people to replace a team leader. But then I wasn't even planning to get a production, but then at the pace we were growing, from going from 10 to 80 agents by then, you're like, okay, it's safe to do that. How do I focus my time on growing the company? And I mean, we coach together every single week. It's something new. Like, what tool are we adding this week? What systems? Who are we hiring? How do we restructure this department? It's just been crazy. Like, but we're constantly looking at, where we're going, where the pain points are before it even comes. I wouldn't be able to do a pivot if I was in production.
You bring up a really good point, right? And it's almost like you have if you're in production and you're trying to scale your company, it's almost as if you have 1 foot in the door and 1 foot out, right? And so how could you be 100% committed into owning the results of one or the other? Because it's really 2 hats. And so what would you say, and what advice would you give to somebody that may have been in your shoes of like, do I give up production? Obviously, there's a fear of income. You walked through some of the numbers that you needed to basically get out of production. What advice would you give to them?
You're not gonna be able to do yourself, right? That's why we're talking to my team leaders, then, because then you can't do an on. I mean, 10, like, yeah, bringing 10 agents to replace you. Who's gonna do the onboarding? Who's gonna do the training? Who's gonna do the recruiting calls? Who that, right? So you need to constantly hire ahead. If you look at the org chart on most big teams, they're pretty similar. There's like, most people have a lot more. Like, we're actually pretty slim. I can go through later, but we're pretty nimble and slim on the department. But right now, we saw what's going on last year when I had like 20 or 30 recruiting calls a month. Like, okay, we're on something. I need to like figure this out, because I only had one assistant, by the way, last June. One assistant and me. She handles my transactions. We're in recruiting call together. We're training new agents. We're doing every onboarding, and it's like, this is not going to work. So we brought on a sales manager or a sales person, a sales leader, to help us with like taking all the tasks that you have to do and constantly chopping up in different departments. So it sounds really complicated, but it's not. Like, I just gave you recruiting, onboarding, training, escrows. Well, I hired a sales manager to take away the recruiting calls and help with onboarding. We brought an assistant to help with then the onboarding. So we took all these tasks, chopped up. So currently, as it is today, we have 4 leadership team members. My assistant now is executive director. She has assistants. The assistant to my assistant, which was helping marketing, now handles all of our onboarding and vendor relationships. The sales manager I brought on, he's never sold a house in his life prior to last year. So that's when I think sales manager, I think someone that's like day to day and that stuff. So we actually don't even have a typical sales manager in our company. We're actually, I think we look for one, and you said we shouldn't, but that's something I think we should fill in. But then Elias is our director of sales coaching. He started doing coaching calls 3 times a week. He does the one-on-ones with the agents. He does the productivity, and then we do workshops, stuff like that. And then we brought in a trainer, and then we did some video series, but now he's a director of operations. Now we recently hired a trainer. So if you're looking to grow a company, you need to identify what the roles are, because right now, if you're a team leader or a book owner, you're doing all of it, right? If you don't have a lot of staff, you're really doing, and I'm pretty sure, I don't think you do any of them very well, right? Because most leaders lead and charismatic, they're influential, they're motivating, but why would they get bogged down by doing the onboarding and marketing stuff? So like, I think looking ahead at where and how you want your company to grow, how big you want it, and hiring ahead. If you hire ahead, you have more support, so you can focus on other things like recruiting and training. And helping your agents increase their production so you can decrease your production.
I've had the front row seats to this woman's growth who last year broke a record of selling 117 homes, not as a team, but as an agent. And it's a rare achievement that we see in our industry. And what I'm even more impressed by is that she is a wife and a mama of 5. This is what I saw when it's not a or, but it is an and. When we build our business and have priorities, how do you integrate it all? And she's a great example of figuring things out when we have unexpected life situations like kids getting sick or different events. So I want to welcome the one and only Denise Jarbo to the show. It takes a ton of grit to accomplish definitely what you have accomplished. How do you just keep pushing? Is there things that you work on with your mindset, or were you just born that way?
That's a good one. I'm blessed to have always kind of been a hustler, but just like anybody, I hit my little bumps in the road where it just gets a little hard. But I would say just having that naturally helps, but being around positive people and always surrounding myself with people that will make me better and will brighten my day and push me. That's exactly what I've done since I've gotten into real estate. I've always been on a team of like-minded people who've been where I haven't been before, and then people that I can help at the same time. So I'm invested in following these people and doing more than I've done before. And then also the people that have just joined us, helping them come along their way and have success.
Oh, I love that. How important, like as you speak about that, how important is environment, mentoring, and like coaches to your success?
Oh gosh, you cannot go without it. Absolutely. Because I know you always hear, you need to get rid of toxic people in your life, or, reduce the amount of time that you're around them. And we all have people like that in our life, a family member or this or that. And, we can try to influence them, but ultimately they end up influencing us if we allow to be around them, and people stay with them for long periods of time is because of the environment. And I never would have dreamed in a commission but pay environment that it would be like that, because we're all technically competing against one another, but somehow we're really we're all cheering one another on. And just in comparison to my job that I was in before I got into real estate, I was a salary, like working in a cubicle in a uniform distribution company. And really, we were all just there, like punching a clock to get our paycheck. There was no, oh, you're doing such a great job at payroll and you paid more people this week than you did last week, or you did, there was none of that. Or it's just, every environment's got to have it, and every job's got to have, everybody's got to do a job, and everybody's got to pick up trash, but you've got to be around people that are just taking what they can out of their day and being positive. With Keller Williams and the Harris Jarbo group, we've got just a great culture. And if you can get that going and keep all the right people on the bus, and then, quickly get rid of the people that you can see that don't have that attitude and that tenacity, then you're going to be better off, because you get one bad apple and it kind of spoils the bunch for sure.
So good. I think some people are listening to you and they're going, wow, I still think that some of them are still blown away. 117 homes all last year. She must not have a life. Right? But what I do know is that you probably have gotten away and taken some vacation. So like, how do you balance where, you don't have that burnout, especially with that kind of production?
Yeah, for sure. So I made it a point last year that I would at all costs, put my children's events on the calendar and be there for those, because I'd already, you do have to give up a little bit those first few years to start the grind. And if you I don't want you to say you put your family on the back burner, but you do have to skip a few things, and hopefully you have a partner that helps you, be there when you can't be. But last year I said, I'm not going to miss any of those things. And whether it was like a weekend trip with some girlfriends or a trip to the mall with my kids and my husband in Nashville, a couple hours away, we made sure, we were doing things monthly or bi-monthly. And I probably went on at least four, like 4 or 5 day trips, whether it was with work or in which, it was fun and educational at the same time, or with my family. That really helps when you've always got something to look forward to. And it's like, this is why I'm grinding. So I can go on these vacations and live this life and share these experiences with my loved ones and take them more places. So yeah, like I definitely think you've always got to have, Kelly says this, she's like, schedule your playtime out first. And then, make sure that you meet the goals that are going to fund that playtime for sure.
Mm-hmm. So good. A lot of people are going, for those that have a significant other or partner and you are building a massive business, how do you get a supportive partner? Or is it something that you had to talk about with your husband saying, hey, there are going to be some nights that I may not be home to cook dinner or to do whatever because I've got clients? Like, how do you have that conversation with your partner so that you guys are on the same page and you have that support?
Yeah, that was one thing that was really hard when I went into this, is because, I was getting a paycheck every 2 weeks salary, and that was a constant. And I went to my husband and I said, listen, I've talked to a few people about this. I've prayed on it. I really feel like it's right for me. And I was almost a little bit scared to ask him, say, will you support me in this? Are you going to be happy? Because I probably would have done it anyway, but I needed his support because we wouldn't have lasted through those, first few years where it was a little bit of a struggle getting my momentum up. And he really, he said, Denise, I know from things you've done in the past that you can do this if you stick with it. And and we both looked at it and said, this is just ever changing. It's not something that I could probably ever get sick of. It's not something that's ever going to, we're not going to need it. There's always going to be a market for real estate, even though neither one of us had ever really been interested in it. It really just sparked that opportunity of something for both of us. And so, and as the years have gone on, he's seen, because he was skeptical at first, but he's seen what has changed in our life and what's changed in me. And so those nights where we had to sacrifice and I wasn't home, it was all worth it. But he works the nights and he always has. So that was a different thing too, because there were nights where it was like my kids were a little bit older, some of them. And so they were able to help themselves until I got home at night. But just make sure before you jump into anything like this that you definitely have a support system, whether it's your parents or your family or your spouse or partner, because they're gonna be the ones that are gonna help you when times get rough. They're gonna be there cheering you on and say, we can do this. You've come so far. Let's keep going.
I have met thousands of agents, especially brand new agents and realtors, right? And you're one person that I knew without a shadow of a doubt had the it factor from the very beginning. You're willing to do whatever it took. I could just see it in your demeanor. I think whether you're a new agent or a newer entrepreneur, he's got something that he's willing to share on the show. And I cannot wait. And I'm honored to have you. Welcome to the show, Ed Barrato.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited.
Your first year, you had massive production. How many units did you close last year?
It ended up being 51. Yeah, 51 units.
This guy had a goal of 30 for those that are listening or watching on YouTube. He had a goal of 30. And if you guys have followed him on social, and we'll probably ask him later, his social handle is like, he had this whole thing, and to surpass it to 51, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
What do you think as you look back at your first year in the business? If you could boil it down to 3 things, what do you think made you do that type of production?
You know what I realized, Raquel, and this is what I love about, the times that we talk and, in these masterminds is number one is obviously like hard work, right? And then number two, I think just really dialing in on the systems and really like when somebody gives you advice in terms of like, hey, this is what it took for me to be successful in real estate. And I'm showing you the tools, the systems and the processes that you should, incorporate in your business. It's so easy to say like, oh yeah, that's great. I'm so inspired. I love it. And then you forget about it like the next day or 1 week later. But I think it's really different when you take action. I think in one of the Play Bigger events, there was this talk about there's a big difference with thinking bigger and playing bigger. And it's all about the action that you take. And I think another thing is mindset. Like if you really believe in your heart that you're going to set a goal for doing this much in 1 year, and you do everything that it takes to kind of make that happen, I think that's really a big component. Like I quote it on Instagram all of the time. Like ever since I started sales many, many years ago, my favorite quote has always been like, whatever the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve, because I believe that that's so, so true. But to summarize, I think just dialing down on your systems and just having the right mindset and attitude when you go into every single day.
Yeah. As I look back, first of all, when I saw that, I had goosebumps when I saw that on social, because I look back even through our conversations of every time you took action, whether it was a pipeline, whether it was an open house, whether it was the Tiffany boxes, right? Like you completely just took action that you just don't see very often. It's like, oh, great idea. Maybe I'll think about it, but you actually really did play bigger, which I thought was really cool. So speaking of advice, if you were to give advice to somebody brand new today, or somebody that's probably not hitting their goals, we just started 2023, people are kind of in some people are in a slump, right? What advice would you give to that newer agent or to that person that just needs to get restarted again?
Yeah. I think this is actually one of the questions that they brought up in the Reigning Rookies panel. And I'll share that at Kinetic, we call it like the shiny ball syndrome, right? I think it's so important to early on, like identify what your strengths are. And I think as a new agent, it's so important to have a period of like exploration, meaning like, hey, everybody at my office is doing open house and the top agents are having success. So I'm going to, try that, right? But it's really important to identify like which systems and lead sources are working out for you and kind of go with what you're strong at. My advice to a new agent, it's so easy to be like, okay, it's my first year. And for 3 months, I've been doing, Zillow Flex, social media and open house, and I'm having success. And it's so easy to like divert from that and say, oh, but everyone in my office is also doing door knocking, they're doing farming and they're doing these other things. And it's so easy to be distracted. So I think just identifying like as a newer agent, like what are your lead sources and what is giving you the results that you want, and just kind of doubling down on that.
So good. So in your first year as a top agent, I'm not sure when the cutoff is, but I really do think that you should probably apply for Rookie of the Year, by the way, if there is a cutoff, if there's still applications, because I think whether it's your MLS board or whether it's NAR, I think that would be really cool. But in your first year, what were some of the lessons that you had learned?
A lot. I think that one of the biggest lessons that I learned is time management is so important. And I think the second thing that I started to like incorporate is I think sticking true to your morning rituals is really important. I think back at my, previous role from 2016 to 2020, what I did in the morning was very, very consistent. And I started doing that again in 2022, and it's an absolute game changer. But I think a lesson that I learned is sticking true to your systems and making sure that, your morning rituals are in line.
Yeah. So that you can have that focus. I know you're somebody that loves to also play bigger on a whole different level, even with all of your travels. By the way, how many travels did you guys do? 51 deals. And how many times did you travel last year?
Yeah. And this is what I love. Like, I love the community that we have at Play Bigger and the masterminds and whatnot, just because we play bigger in the sense of work, but we also play bigger in our personal lives. It's just shocking to me that I think I went to Hawaii like 4 times last year. And then I did
Maldives. I know you went there.
Yeah. And then I traveled to the Philippines, Singapore, Maldives. And I think having that balance, I think there's this perception that in order to be a successful real estate, like you have to stay put. You can't travel because what's going to happen to your clients? But I think one thing I learned from you is like having that balance and being able to, it's just shocking, like who does 51 transactions and does that many trips, right? But it actually helps, like taking those breaks actually helps with you achieving those big goals because it allows you to reset and it allows you to continue, playing big throughout the entire year.
And I think one thing it does for those that are listening, when you do plan those vacation, it's almost like you're rushing right before you get on that plane, especially if you're going to have no cell phone service, right? Like I'm going to get all my deals in before I leave, right? To go to the Philippines or not working on the plane until I'm like landed. Right?
Yeah. Did you know, Raquel, that 3 of my escrows happened while I was at the airport? Last year, 3 or 4. Yeah. Literally 1, I was in the middle of a counter flying to Hawaii. And I was like, this offer needs to be accepted. And we ratified literally 30 seconds before the plane took off. So you're absolutely right.
There's like this rush of deadline and urgency all of a sudden when you're about to go on a trip. Exactly. So I always tell my top producers, go plan more trips and go travel, right? And you said it earlier, is like one of the things that I do see with agents today is that they're so hesitant to leave because they're afraid that their business is going to fall apart. How are you able to do that, even just navigating through being like a new agent? Is it because you just didn't know any better? Or it was like, hey, I think I put systems in place that I'm still going to be able to enjoy. And this is just part of my lifestyle that I want to be able to do this.
Yeah. I think in the earlier part of the year, it's nice because you could identify kind of what kind of trip you're going to take, right? There are vacations where like I call it a 50-50, where like 50% of the time I'm going to be working and then 50% of the time it's going to be leisure, right? And then all of the things that need to happen on the field, I would just kind of lean on the team if there's ever a client who reaches out and then, they need help showing a home, or if there's a listing and inspections have to be met and whatnot, I could rely on my team with that. And then there are the vacations where like you could literally like shut off, like the one that I took when I went to the Philippines, Maldives, and Singapore. I call that the 595. I came up with this interesting term where I only had to work like actually during that 2 weeks, I only had to work like 5 hours. And I think that's pretty awesome because I really got to enjoy that vacation. And I think and this is why masterminds for me are important because you learn these things, right? It's like, if you're going to go on a trip, like who are you going to lean on to make sure that you can enjoy your quality time with your family and friends and your business is still going to run? So I think towards the second half of last year, now that we have a team in place, there's like a lot more people to lean on.
Oh, so good. And I think for those that are afraid and that are listening, you just have to decide. I think it was a decision you made of how you were going to run your business. And if anything, if it does fall apart, you're going to learn from it. Yeah. You're going to learn how to build it even stronger. And you just got to decide, is it going to be a working vacation? Am I only going to work 5 hours in the next 2 weeks, right? When I travel to all these things.